buying backwards and how it can cost you $10,000 to $30,000 or more, especially in a buyer's market. John Carter here. I'm the broker and owner at RE/MAX River City in Edmonton, Alberta.
I'm Shane Parent, associate broker and owner with RE/MAX River City.
So we just want to have a quick chat today. We're in a very heavy buyer's market in Edmonton right now, and a common one we see in a lot of cases is even some where there are multiple domino deals lined up with sale of buyer's home conditions. So we just want to kind of chat that out and talk about some of the pros and cons and some of the strategies that a lot of realtors are using to effectively coach their clients on how to win in this market and in those situations. So what are you finding, Shane, right now as far as what the expectation, I guess, in the market of the average client is with sale of buyer's home?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it's expectation setting and an understanding of what's going on in the market and what the best and worst case scenario is for the client. And so if I'm meeting with you as a potential seller and buyer, I have to know, can you afford to own two homes? Can you be okay with not having a home for a short period of time? What's the worst case scenario for you? That's super important to know so I can give the right advice for you, right? I think one of the misconceptions is that if I find that perfect home, I can just buy it subject to the sale of me selling my home. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems that you run into is that right now we have a 16% chance of selling in Edmonton and area, which is tough, right? And so if you want to get that offer accepted, you probably have to make that offer pretty sweet for that seller to accept that, right?
And do you think it depends too a lot on, obviously, if you're selling, for example, right now you're selling a condo and moving into an infill, neighborhood that there's more demand on, you're putting yourself in a really tough spot trying to do a sale of buyer's home. That seller that you make the offer on, they're going to ask you, what is your listing already on the market? And they want to know if it's priced well or not. Yeah. And so they'll be putting pressure on you to sell your home now. Yeah.
Well, and I think you make a good point. The seller should be inquiring on, what are you selling? Is it sellable? Is it worth me tying up my property on this hope and a dream that you're going to sell your place, right? So I think that's due diligence on that seller's end of things, because there is a good chance that you're going to tie up your property, although you can still have showings and you can still accept an offer with a shotgun clause to get out of it. I'll find that a lot of maybe newer to industry buyers, agents, might not even show that property because it is pending, even though it's pending subject to the sale.
Right.
Or on the other end, you might get an experienced buyer's agent who is really hustling for his clients. He finds out you're subject to the sale of buyer's home, and he goes in aggressively to get that offer booted out and their client's offer in. Right. And so it's not necessarily a good situation on either end of that.
So what are the most common strategies that clients can use to, what questions does their realtor need to coach them through as to how to avoid getting stuck in those situations?
So again, if it's my client and they have a property to sell and a property to buy, in this market, as we're in a buyer's market, having their place listed for sale, being active and having some interest before we really get aggressive on looking at property. To me, that's the best win-win scenario. You're going to maximize what you can get for your place, and you'll have a good idea of the sale price, not just what you're asking, but what you'll actually get for it once you have an offer in place, or how the market's reacting to the sale of your home. If it's really hot, it's really active, and you may be getting some offers or it's pending, then get more aggressive on looking at property.
List their property first, let the market give you feedback and gauge that, and then you're in a power position when you're going to make offers.
Absolutely.
So you might take them out and look at a few properties just to get a sense of the market, of what they can buy, but really you don't get serious and you don't make offers until you have their house either pending or pretty close to it. You have an idea.
9 times out of 10, that's my recommendation, right? Unless they can't afford to have both, and they're looking for that really specific property on the buying end, that it's unique. Hey, I can't miss out on this one. There's not going to be another one like this. I have to get it tied up. Then do whatever you can to tie up the property. but have some realistic expectations that first, you're probably going to have to pay more to get that condition accepted, and you might have to reduce the sale price of your home to meet that timeline.
Right.
Where now things are taking a little bit longer to sell or expiring or what have you, you'll have to get ahead of that wave and get aggressively priced to make sure that yours gets sold.
So I think a common one we do to kind of put some numbers to it is sitting down with the client right up front. You can get them in touch with the mortgage broker or their lender and really understand, could you buy both? Could you hold both properties? No one wants to. We're not saying own them both for 5 years, but could you do it for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? Could you manage that? And then you're in a power position now where you can make an offer if the right property came up and give yourself time to sell the other property.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases that can help because you're out of the property now. It'll maybe show a little better if it's staged or whatnot without having living in it.
Yeah.
Plus it gets rid of the annoyance factor of having to have shown you while you live there, all of that.
100%. It's about knowing all your options and seeing what makes the most sense and how you can win in today's market.
And a common one too, as far as like a numbers example, is explaining it this way, that if we list your property first and make an offer on a property subject to sale, you have less negotiating power with that seller. That seller is waiting for your property that they don't have any control over to sell before their property sells. So they're going to probably negotiate a little higher on their price. They're going to want to stay closer to, on average, it's 5 to 10 grand. You might pay more for the property you're buying. And then you now are under the time crunch to get your listing sold. So right now, if days on market's 50, 60 days, you're talking 2 months. Well, you're trying to sell your property in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, tops, because you have a pending offer on the property you want. You're really excited about that property you want. So you're going to end up having the price lower on your listing to get it to sell faster than the average days on market. So if you're in 2 months and you want to sell in 2 weeks, you got to be at the bottom end of that price range. So on average, that can be 10 to 20 grand as well. So often, if you buy backwards, it can end up costing you $10,000 to $30,000+.
Yeah, and I would say people have that condition to reduce their stress.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, especially in today's market, I find that it adds more stress by having that in there with those factors that we discussed.
Yeah, awesome.